I was a retired monster hunter, until the dark legend summoned me for one final hunt. I never should have opened that door. I felt an icy chill seep into my bones the moment the latch clicked. Years of choosing safety had turned me soft, but I needed to know what lurked behind. Out of curiosity, out of dread, I stepped inside. The room smelled stale, like forgotten dreams trapped in dust. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering under the dim flicker of a single bulb. It was the kind of darkness that whispered secrets, coaxing me deeper into its grasp. I could hear my heart beating a thud, a drum roll to the symphony of fear that I poured concrete over those memories, sealed them away as tight as a coffin. The hunts, the screams, the monsters that never truly left. But here I was again, placed right on the precipice of that old life, adrenaline prickling my skin. Strange noises enveloped me. A creaking that wasn't quite the house settling, more like a voice, low and growling. Thoughts flooded my mind. Could it be? I hesitated, sweat crawling down my spine like a warning. I moved, hands trembling, towards the source of the sound. The shadows seemed to stretch and breathe around me, menacing and expectant of a sudden crash. My breath hitched. I jumped, eyes darting left and right, seeking the creature that had invaded my thoughts. A chair toppled over in the corner, its leg cracking against the wooden floor with a sharp scream. I knew I should leave, but I was rooted to the spot, staring into the void like a moth drawn to fire. There it was again, a rustle in the darkness. Something was there, something that shouldn't be. I pressed my back against the wall, fighting the urge to run, panic bubbling. The weight of 1,000 nightmares pressed against my chest. I felt my throat tighten, the silence around me oppressive, and just when I thought I might scream, the shadows shifted. A figure emerged, gliding just beyond the edge of perception. My heart raced, thrumming against the walls of my chest. Was it a ghost, a memory? Was it hunting me just as I had once hunted it? And then everything stopped. The world held its breath. I stood there, frozen, as a chilling whisper slithered through the air. It's time. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened with a fetid scent, a blend of decay and something far more ancient, and I staggered back, heart racing. The figure flickered, like a projector trying desperately to stay focused, and in that half-light, I could make out its features, an ashen face grinning with a cruel delight, hollow eyes peering into the depths of my soul. Join us, it intoned, voice a low, droning chant that seeped into my consciousness. You know what we always wanted. Panic surged anew, and I spun around, desperate to escape this frozen tableau. The door was still ajar, but it felt impossibly far away, as if the darkness sought to claim me first. I rushed forward, feeling breath against the back of my neck, a whisper of wind that sent a ripple of ice through my spine. I burst through the doorway, slamming it shut behind me, panting, but the heartbeat of the house pulsed still, throbbing, insistent. A growl rolled through the walls, a promise, a threat. They weren't going to let me go easily. I stumbled into the hallway, glancing back at the door. Was the laughter escaping from behind it? Had it been there all along, just waiting for me to return? Walls constricted around me, an echo of confinement I'd fought against for years. Memories rushed in, a tide of faces and blood-soaked hunts. I could feel each soul I had failed, each lost attempt at captivity tugging at the corners of my mind, crying out, demanding my attention. Suddenly, a thud resonated from the floor above, reverberating through the foundation. With it came a series of soft, scuttling sounds, like nails scraping against wood, and I dared not contemplate what could be creeping in the shadows. The familiarity of dread wrapped around me, urging me to seek refuge elsewhere. That I pressed myself against the wall, creeping toward the staircase, each step filled with a tangible fear. Such a long time since I'd been so frightened. I should have been a guardian of bravery, the very fabric of my existence woven from valor. Yet here I was, a coward back in the lioness den. Shadows pooled in every corner, seeming to whisper, "You are not free." As my foot landed on the first step, the air thickened, transforming into a palpable force. It congealed in my throat, choked me, and I faltered, heart racing. I could hear a new voice mixed within the whispers, one that spoke in tongues I should have forgotten, inherited only from the darkest lore I'd ever chased. The old shadows sputtered, murmuring, acknowledging my fear. I turned just as the mirror on the wall exploded outward, shards carving through the night. Reflections of monstrous visages twisted in agony flittered among the shards, forever unable to escape their fate. And then the house shuddered, a terrible groan of wood and stone that echoed like the wail of a banshee. I stumbled backward, the remnants of reflection gleaming sharply at my feet, corners of glass sparking with the light of trapped souls. A figure crawled from the scattered shards, legs bent at unnatural angles, sharp teeth protruding from a maimed smile. It was grotesquely beautiful, a perversion of life, and my breath caught once more as it lunged towards me. I spun, tearing my gaze away, and sprinted up the remaining stairs. This time the screams of the damned overwhelmed me, cascading through every crevice. The door creaked ajar, leading into a darkened corridor that stretched infinitely. And as I stepped into the blackness, that unsettling whisper coiled around me again. Its time cold fingers grazed my arm from behind. I turned slowly, dread flooding my system, and for the first time, I saw the thousands of eyes watching from the shadows, not just one entity, but a multitude of lost souls, all trapped in a concert of horror. With a gasp, I stumbled backward into what felt like a wall of dense fog, and as the darkness closed in, recognition began to dawn. I had not merely reopened a door, I had walked into the very belly of the beast, and then a scream erupted from my mouth, a sound laced with the agony of remembrance echoing through the otherwise unnaturally still night. But in the depths of that scream, I heard the reply, a unified chorus, resonating as a chilling promise. "Your hours now." The fog thickened, swallowing me whole, and a realization clawed at my mind as the world darkened around me. I was not alone, and they were very, very hungry. The fog curled around me like icy tendrils, squeezing tighter as if to draw me into their dark embrace. Whispers escalated into frantic murmurs, each voice layered atop another, all competing for attention. "Join us," they chanted, a chilling blend of tones that crawled beneath my skin. "We have waited, we have yearned," but my instinct for survival ignited a spark of rebellion, a flicker of courage thick with the knowledge of my past. I wasn't a stranger to these haunted calls. I had spent my life chasing nightmares and butchering beasts. Yet here I was, like a moth drawn toward the flame of a candle, trying to dance with something far more sinister than I'd ever known. The corridor stretched infinitely, each step I took swallowed by the weight of unfathomable despair. Soft sobs seeped through the air, echoing down the hall. Dull lights flickered from nowhere, casting long shadows that flitted like specters over the walls. At my side, that uneasiness turned palpable. Each breath became an agonizing reminder of all I had fought against, but had never quite subdued. Sudden warmth brushed my back, a memory flickering on the edges of my consciousness. I had felt this before, a similar chill of death and despair. But what had it meant? I couldn't place it, and the images felt hauntingly familiar. Perhaps a token from another haunt, or perhaps a promise made. The memory eluded me like smoke through my fingers. Panic surged again as I stumbled deeper into the corridor, the air growing thicker with intangible dread. Each heartbeat echoed a warning, and all at once, the whispers crescendoed into a roar, pressing against my temples. "He will find you," they seemed to hiss. The words dripped with malice that I reached for the nearest door, its wood cold against my palm, praying it would lead to escape. With a yank, I pulled it open and stepped inside a dimly lit room. The disheveled remains of a child's bedroom awaited me. Cracked walls adorned with moth-eaten posters of heroes long forgotten, and toys littered the floor, frozen in a state of desolation. Dust motes danced in stray beams of moonlight filtering through the grimy window. An unbearable sorrow settled over me. Each toy was a mourning relic, a piece of a life stolen away by the monsters I had failed to banish. The anguish of forgotten dreams and lost innocence gripped my heart. Shadows flitted from corners, wraith-like figures shifting just outside the reach of light, their weeping forming a melody of despair. Through the muted sobs, a rhythm emerged. "Find him! Find him!" murmured the soft voices. The house itself seemed alive, its every creak a lament, a desperate plea. I pressed a hand against my chest, feeling the weight of my past sins press down upon me once more. The bed creaked disturbingly, as if in agreement. I hesitated, dread swelling within me. I knew what festered beneath those sheets, what darkness awaited me, but I was drawn to it like a moth to the flame of absolution. As I pulled the sheets back, a surge of cold shot through me. The bed was empty, but the space felt alive with the echoes of what had once curled beneath its covers. I could almost hear the soft laughter of a child drowned in despair, a laughter that morphed into a high-pitched scream, a note of terror that made my skin crawl. I stumbled back, falling against the door, the weight of my disbelief crashing upon me like waves against a shore. I had failed again, another victim abandoned to the shadows. As dread slithered in my gut, the air warped, a new voice emerging amid the cries. It was deeper, clawing beneath my skin. "You think you can escape?" It laughed, low and guttural. "You don't understand. You belong to this place now." Walls shuddered, pulsating like a beating heart. Suddenly, the sound of 1,000 feet began their advance, a thrumming mass of sorrow echoing from the hallway, growing louder. The realization struck me. I had awakened something far greater than mere ghosts. The souls here craved vengeance, and they had chosen me as their harbinger, with horrors festering just beyond the thin wooden barrier, and, with the force of their fury surging closer, I knew I had mere moments to act. I turned back towards the door, the darkness around me thickening, pressing closer like a vice. And then, amidst the pangs of despair, I saw them, the children, suddenly standing at the doorway, eyes wide, mouths twisted in screams of terror. Time faltered as I began to scream, but no sound issued forth. It became painfully apparent that I wouldn't escape them after all. They were mine to hunt now, and the hunt had only just begun. I blinked against the surge of panic, desperately searching the hallway for a means of escape, but the children's forms began to solidify, their once transparent figures now brimming with purpose and fury. Their faces blurred between innocence and atrocity, sprouting shadows that flickered like flames around them. Each incorporeal scream raised the hairs on my neck and chilled my veins. "Help us!" one child cried, stepping forward with outstretched hands that trembled with agony. "Help us before it's too late." Their voices melded into an anguished choir, each word clawing at my heart. I stood frozen, caught in a grotesque tableau of despair, each child a grinning reminder of my failure to protect the lost. I wanted to scream out, to pull back from the encroaching dread, but something held me fast. Horrible instincts surged inside me, twining through memories of victories turned to ash. As they reached for me, time warped. Each heartbeat pounded louder against my ribs until I fought against it. "No!" I shouted, my voice finally breaking free. "You shouldn't be here." But the words were swallowed by the darkness. My conviction became a mere whisper lost in the echoes of their terror. They stepped closer, and behind them, a swirling mist began to coalesce, an ominous figure forming within the shadows, the embodiment of all I had once hunted. A flicker of recognition burst within me. I could almost taste the bitter tang of revenge in the air. Suddenly, the room around us trembled, causing dust to rain like shimmering, cursed confetti from the ceiling. The very walls echoed the children's cries, vibrating with the resentment of 1,000 unavenged souls. The floor beneath my feet shifted, spiraling downwards. The house was resigning itself to a deeper malevolence, as if it were a porthole to the very pit of despair. "Help us!" The whispering chorus echoed louder, now tinged with an urgency that rattled my resolve. The children reached out further, desperation clawing at the edges of their ethereal forms until they began to flicker, their faces contorting into expressions of terror, as if they were being pulled apart by unseen hands. I stumbled back against the doorframe, overwhelmed by the cacophony of their pleas. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the maelstrom, the question hanging in the air like a sacrificial offering. "We need a hunter." The figure in the mist boomed, its voice reverberating through the chaos. "You will plunge back into the abyss, and you will harvest the evil that resides here. Only then will we find peace. But I'm nothing without my tools, my weapons. I protested, a futile effort as the shadows writhed in derision. Suddenly, the figure coalesced completely, revealing an emaciated form cloaked in tattered black, eyes burning with a malevolence that spoke of centuries of darkness. It reached out, its long, skeletal fingers grazing the air with an energy that sent shockwaves coursing through the very foundations. You will be gifted, it intoned, voice like gravel scraping against bare skin. The ghosts will be your guides and companions, for they share your blood, your legacy. You will be reforged in darkness. The children's eyes locked with mine, and in that moment of connection, I felt their chill seep into my bones. Abandonment, fear, and unending sorrow flowed through me, binding me in chains forged from their memories. What do you desire? I whispered, my words trembling against the weight of realization. I was intertwined with their fate, shackled to a hunt that called me back like a moth to a flame, daring me to embrace the very demons I had once vowed to destroy. Before I could brace myself, the temperature plunged drastically, my breath crystallizing as the shadows thickened, pulsating around me. The doorway shimmered and distorted, vanishing into a hazy void that beckoned me forward. What choice do I have? I breathed, swallowed by my own despair as the darkness enveloped me. Then, with a violent jolt, the ground beneath me gave way. I was falling into a pit of blackness, drawn deeper into the suffocating void. Find him. The voices echoed, their urgency fraying at my resolve, the one who led us astray. And as I plunged deeper, realization gripped my heart with icy fingers. The hunt was far from over. An even greater horror awaited below, a singular tie that would unveil the true terror of what I had failed to recognize, the very essence of evil entwined with my own lineage. Then I felt a sudden crash of cold air as I landed hard on the ground, surrounded by a swirling mist just thick enough to conceal what lay beyond. Transforming into a valley of shadows called forth by the children's screams, the hunt had morphed into something unspeakably horrific, and somewhere amidst the torment lay the embodiment of vengeance I was fated to confront. Gritting my teeth, I rose to my feet, shadows swirling around me like a living shroud, and the whisper reverberated once more, clear and precise. You shall find him, but will you survive the search? I stumbled forward, every instinct screaming to turn back, but a force beyond my comprehension urged me onward into the swirling mist. A palpable sense of dread hung over the valley, thick as a shroud, pressing against my skin like icy fingers. The air crackled with unease, layered with unspoken horrors and the scent of decay. Find him, the chorus murmured around me, their voices now distorted, echoing from all directions. It felt like a labyrinth of despair, each turn promising relentless torment. He is watching. I held my breath and squinted into the fog, fighting against an urge to scream, to shatter the dense silence that enveloped me. As I moved deeper, shadows writhed at the corners of my vision, glimpses of half-formed shapes, flickering like dying embers in the night. They whispered secrets, tantalizing fragments of stories ripped from the fabric of time, echoing in my ears. Out of the murk, a figure materialized, a young boy with short, matted hair and wide, tear-streaked eyes. He trembled, his small frame shivering like a leaf caught in a tempest. Please, help me, he croaked, despair etched into every feature. He is coming for me. If you can save me, you can save them all. Who? I demanded, my pulse quickening. Who is coming? His gaze flicked over my shoulder, eyes filled with terror. The puppet master, he is in control. He pulls the strings, and he won't let you leave. Before I could ask more, an oppressive darkness surged through the mist, an entity more sinister than mere shadows. I felt it snake around my ankles, constricting my legs like icy tendrils. The boy's face went pale, his eyes widening in sheer terror, and I followed his gaze. From the depths of the fog emerged a figure, towering and spectral. Its features were indistinct, shifting and morphing as if reality itself buckled under its presence. It was cloaked in tattered robes that swayed effortlessly despite the lack of wind. A myriad of eyes glimmered in the darkness, hungry and malevolent, like stars in a blackened sky. Release the child, I shouted, moving instinctively to shield him, clenching my fists as if that alone could fend off the horrors. But the figure only laughed a sound that reverberated through the abyss, chilling my blood. This wretched soul? It rasped, voice slick like oil. He is but one thread in a much grander tapestry. A wave of distortion enveloped us, and suddenly the boy was gone, melted into the obsidian mist. My heart thundered against my chest as a cold realization set in. The valley was alive, its shadows shifting a living prison fueled by the anguish of the lost. Your quest has only begun, the creature murmured, stepping closer until its presence engulfed me entirely. With every choice, more shall fall, and the price you pay will bleed you dry. I recoiled, pushing against the weight of despair that seemed to beckon me toward the ground, stealing my breath. What do you want from me? I gasped, searching for some semblance of control in the spiraling chaos. Your essence, it whispered, extending a hand towards me, fingers gliding like smoke. You bear the scent of the hunter, steeped in blood and vengeance. Offer up your past, and you can extract the truth from the darkness. An image flooded my mind, then a reflection of my past sins, the faces of monsters I had hunted, the ones that still haunted me in my dreams. It dawned on me that the threads of my own legacy had become entwined with this nightmare. Perhaps it was my own failure that led to the suffering of these children. The valley trembled again, shadows warping and twisting into new forms, revealing more lost souls flitting between an eternal dance of despair. In the distance, a haunting wail rose, mingling with the whispers that spun around me, growing more frantic by the heartbeat. Find him, the one who led us astray. Their voices shrieked, clarity piercing through the veil of noise, each word a dagger lodged in my heart that I realized there was no escaping the legacy of darkness tied to my name. The shadows drew closer, wrapping around me like chains, and I understood that my pursuit of vengeance would fracture the very fabric of my being. I could either join them in suffering or confront the monstrous truth lurking above me. Are you ready to embrace your fate? The figure implored, its voice thick with temptation. Before I could answer, the ground beneath me trembled violently, a chasm splitting open, revealing a vast abyss teeming with flickering shadows and ghastly echoes of forgotten cries. As I teetered on the edge, the eyes of the looming figure pierced through the darkness, locking onto mine with an invasive scrutiny that threatened to pull me into their depths. And then, without warning, a hand shot out from the chasm, grasping at my ankle, and I was yanked forward, dragging me closer to the edge of oblivion. Help us! A chorus echoed, mixing with my desperate cries as I fought against the force pulling me deeper into the harrowing unknown. But just as I thought I would be devoured by the cold darkness, a light flared ahead of me, a glowing symbol etched into the ground, pulsating with raw power. I could either leap to salvation or plunge into the depths of despair. With the darkness threatening to consume me, I made my choice. As I leaped toward the glowing sigil, the world around me warped, a whirlwind of shadows and blinding light. The sensation of falling vanished, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I landed hard on my knees, breathless, arms outstretched, clutching the earth as if to anchor myself against the relentless pull of despair that hung like a noose around my neck. The light from the sigil pulsed rhythmically, infusing the air with an electric charge. I could feel the entity lurking nearby, its presence still looming just outside the fringes of my vision. Yet I sensed a flicker of warmth emanating from the symbol, as if it recognized the fragmented remnants of hope locked within me. It throbbed insistently, beckoning for recognition as I surged to my feet. Utilize it, a whisper echoed from within the light, a voice gentle yet urgent. Harness your past, and it shall guide you through the labyrinth of despair. Reeling from the encounter, I trembled. The notion flickered like a candle, illuminating the dark. Could I access the strength drawn from my past confrontations? The monsters I'd faced, the scars I'd earned, what if the very essence of those trials could be rekindled in this moment? I reached out toward the sigil, hoping to absorb its energy, to become the hunter I once was. Memories cascaded around me, each one tethered to the people I had lost, victims, fellow hunters, and the fleeting laughter of innocence crushed beneath the weight of malevolence. Faces blurred together, swirling into a storm of regret and pain. As the sigil's warmth enveloped me, I felt those lost souls call out. An ethereal chorus merged with my own heartbeat. Yet the moment was fleeting. With a screech that pierced the air, the dark figure tore through the shimmering barrier, its form more grotesque, filled with fury. The multitude of eyes revolved at impossible angles, alive with malice. "You think to wield the light," it scoffed, its voice now a maddening cacophony. "You are but a flickering candle against an endless void." I could see the shadows lurching around it, twisting with a life of their own lost spirits, hungering and aching for freedom. The air grew thick with the stench of despair as they lunged forward, merging with the figure, intensifying its own dread. Suddenly, I felt an old fire ignite within me, driven by newfound purpose. Rallying against the impending tide, I clenched my fists, feeling the pulse of my own pain and resolve intertwined with the symbol S light. "You may have claimed my past, but you will not dictate my future," I shouted, my voice gaining strength as I fed on the lamentations of those lost to this darkness. The sigil flared brighter, illuminating the valley as if the sky itself split open. I could see the fractured land extending toward an eternal horizon where echoes morphed into cries of agony, begging for liberation. "The puppet master," I cried once more. "Show yourself." A horrible laughter erupted, echoing back from the shadows. "You call for a master, yet you do not understand the true nature of your enemy. You are entangled in a tapestry woven by your own actions. Every thread you pull brings another child closer to suffering." In that moment, the ground convulsed, splitting wider as swirling mists coiled upward, encasing the sigil in a spiraling vortex. I struggled to maintain my footing, drawn closer to the chasm below, where a multitude of voices clawed at the edges of my mind. Amplifying the horror, I could not afford despair. I had to act. "I want to give in," I declared, my voice resonating within the shimmering light. The swirling mist faltered momentarily, hesitating before purposefully swirling back toward the depths of the void, each shadowy remnant vying for my attention. I took a step back, fear blooming in my chest, yet something within me pulsated stronger than worry, a legacy of defiance. Behind me, the sigil surged, a brilliant shield against the encroaching darkness. Heart pounding, I forced myself to confront the shadows that gathered intimately around me, each twisted visage beckoning me to unravel, dragging me toward the very chasm of despair I sought to escape. "But you are nothing," I screamed, challenging the shadowy figures that writhed at the edges. "Your power is rooted in fear. I will reclaim what you think you own." Just as the figures lunged, a searing light erupted from the sigil, arcing toward the dark entity with a ferocity I did not foresee. It coursed through the air, illuminating the valley with a blinding glare, clearing the tendrils that sought to ensnare me. For a moment, the darkness recoiled, and in that instant I charged, diving headfirst into the fray. The pulsating light engulfed my vision, and as I struck through the shroud of shadows, the cacophony of terrified wails crescendoed, obliterated by the overwhelming force tearing apart the familiar despair. But then, as I breached the surface of their chaotic grasp, I found myself not emerging from the darkness, but drawn deeper within a swirling maelstrom, captivating my senses that a distorted scream echoed from the depths, morphing into a haunting call. I realized with dread what I had stumbled upon. A figure, one more twisted than the others, lingered just ahead, pale, emaciated, and pulsating with dark energy. It looked back at me through sunken eyes that ignited a sense of dread deep within my soul. "Finish what you started," it hissed, its words distorted, dragging me toward the very shadows I had fled. Could there be more secrets to unveil? Or had I unwittingly set into motion a far more sinister reckoning? In that moment of confrontation, every fiber of my being screamed for revelation, yet dread coiled tighter around me, leaving me suspended on a precipice marred by nightmares left unresolved. And as the edges of reality twisted beneath my feet, the shadows whispered a name that marked my fate in blood and echoes. "Dante." And just like that, the sigil sputtered, flickering like a dying flame. The darkness surged. The final threads were fraying. I braced for the impact, knowing this was only the beginning of my descent into terror. A shockwave rippled through the air as the sigil's light diminished, casting me into an ocean of shadow deeper than I had ever imagined. The haunting echo of Dante gnawed at the edges of my mind, pinning me in place as the specter loomed closer. Its skeletal fingers reached out, a grotesque mockery of any warmth I'd ever known. "You think you've come to reclaim your past?" It rasped, a voice that twisted with each syllable, taunting me with the truths buried beneath layers of shame and regret. "You are merely a ghost amongst the damned." As it spoke, the shadows around it pooled, coalescing into figures I recognized, faces I had fought so hard to erase from my memory. Traitors and innocent souls alike merged into the mass, their eyes shining with desperation. They reached out, grasping for my attention, their mouths moving silently, pleading, yet laden with blame. Technicolor memories flashed through my mind, a montage of horrific moments. I recalled every decision that had led me here, every sacrifice made at the altar of my own arrogance. "This isn't real," I muttered under my breath, desperate to disentangle myself from the overwhelming weight of regret. I turned back to the entity, determination igniting an ember within me. "You want to take me like this?" The creature's laughter, a sound that vibrated through the air like shattering glass, both thrilled and terrified me. "Sweet Dante, but how little you understand." Its form twisted grotesquely, limbs elongating as it slithered closer. "The darkness is not an enemy, it is an ally. You, too, are wrapped in its comforting embrace, holding tightly to the shadows of your own misdeeds." With that, the air became denser, the ground trembling beneath me as the figures around us deepened their mournful lamentations. Every sob and cry pierced my heart like daggers, intensifying the pounding in my chest. I gasped, grasping at memories that felt like splinters lodged in my soul, fragmented and jagged. In the heart of the flickering darkness, I felt a faint pulse of power, a thread of connection that whispered to my spirit, hinting at an ancient right. Could it be that in embracing my past, I could turn this power against my foe? With my resolve solidified by sheer desperation, I took a deep breath, focusing on the sigil's essence still flickering within me. I harnessed the pain of my past. I shouted, letting the words resonate like thunder. "You cannot own what I have borne. You will not strip away my strength." The shadows couldn't take what I had turned into a weapon, could they? As I cried out, the sigil surged within, igniting a fury that pushed against the encroaching horrors. Light burst forth from me, a spherical beacon that pushed the shadows momentarily back, creating a small sanctuary amidst the encircling darkness. Yet they hungered for me, yearning to pull me back into their depths. The pale figure snarled, its existence distorting in the brightness. "You think you can sever your connection to me? Face the truth, Dante. You are a fallen huntsman. The abyss is a cloak you wear with pride." It reached out, its grasping fingers almost caressing the edges of the light, trying to pull me back into its fold. "What I wore is irrelevant," I screamed, feeling the pulse of strength and fury surged anew within me. "I am more than my mistakes." The ground roared as chasms erupted beneath the shadows, consuming the wailing specters. There was no solace for them, only darkness awaited. I felt their anguish seep into my bones, a visceral reminder of everything I had failed to save. Gritting my teeth, I forced the light to expand, igniting a burning barrier between me and the creature, a shield for all the souls crying for justice. But then the winds shifted, they twisted, howling with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine. "Finish what you started," the entity chanted, its distorted voice merging with the storm. The shadows crashed against my barrier like a tempest, battering my infernal light as the ground beneath me trembling with an almost sentient hunger. Then came the sound, an unmistakable and chilling click. Behind me, the sigil flickered ominously, threatening to die as a shadowed hand stretched behind me, capturing the source of my power. The figure reeled back, its other forms huddling in solidarity. "What will you become, Dante? I promise you will be embraced as one of us." "No," I roared, spinning to confront the entity. But as I did, a wave of darkness swept through me, electric with dread. My throat closed, and in that moment I felt it, the heavy saturation of hopelessness that clawed at my heart, the inescapable truth of what lingered behind me. Before I could react, the sigil shattered, light spilling like crystal shards across the ground. The breath fled my lungs, leaving only a cold void as the shadows surged, engulfing me. They pulled me toward the edge of oblivion, a tempting whisper enticing me, with promised oblivion filled with power and freedom from consequence. In one last fleeting glance, I beheld the glimmering shards of my sigil scattered on the ground, each a reminder of hope extinguished, each holding a piece of the past I had tried to conquer. Yet one shard remained aglow, pulsating intensely with a heartbeat that called to me like the cry of desperation from a lost child. And just as the darkness coiled around my throat, and I opened my mouth to unleash a scream, the lights dimmed, swallowed by an unfathomable void, and I felt a final existence teetering on the brink. "Embrace it," the creature screamed, exulting in its triumph, a promise of nightmare closing in with a swiftness that left no room for retreat. In that moment of blinding terror, I understood the true choice laid before me: consume or be consumed. Would I allow my soul to be woven into this new horror, or would I struggle one final time against the pull of my own despair? The shadows coiled tighter, and I braced for the inevitable dissolution as I felt an ancient anger rise within me. But the dark laughter zoomed in closer. A cacophony of madness and chaos lashed at my ears as a single thought landed like an anchor in my mind. It was far from over. Every nerve in my body thrummed with the enormity of my choice, the shadows dining only momentarily as they recoiled from the pulsing light of the sigil shard. Gritting my teeth, I knew the creature was reveling in my struggle, aware of my hesitation as if it were a moth caught in a web, teased by the promise of escape. "Dante, your moment of reckoning has arrived," it screeched, and the very air seemed to boil with its taunts. I felt the shadows enveloping me shift, eager for a taste of failed resolve, hungry for the despair that clung to my heart like a shroud. The remaining shard blazed bright, a beacon against the tide of darkness. Blood roared in my ears, thrumming in time with my racing heart. A memory surged through me of my wife, her laughter banishing fears in vaults darker than this one. Yet the darkness closed in, whispering sorrows long buried. I focused on my breath, trying to tap into that moment of warmth before it snuffed out entirely. "I want to be your puppet," I spat, squeezing the fiery shard in my palm till it burned. "I am not the monster you think I am." With each cry, the shadows rippled, trying to drown my voice. But the shard pulsed steadily in my hand, offering a sliver of a forgotten power, one I had long abandoned. I felt a surge of primal fury ignite within me, a monstrous will that had once driven me to banish creatures far worse than this abomination. "Feel the strength of my defiance," I shouted, raising the shard high, and with it, summoning a brilliance that burst forth, a wave of light that sent seismic shockwaves of panic into the jaws of the darkness. For an instant, the specter faltered, the hungry crowds of shadows wavered in fear, their twisted forms flickering like moths seeking escape from a flame. But the moment was fleeting. They thickened and bulged, pushing back against the light. The witching laughter screeched through the air, a chorus of anguish torn from the mouths of lost souls. "You think you can defeat your deepest fears with mere light? The shadows are born from you, Dante. You are doomed to wear the mask of despair." The ground trembled under my feet. Fissures opened. The specter's cries mingled with the earth's groaning. The air thickened with odorous despair, each breath more troubling than the last. I realized that the shadows were not merely representations of my past. They were sentient, weaving their essence to take on forms and nightmares that held power over me. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of something shifting within the mass of shadows. A visage emerged, my own face, twisted in agony. Confusion seized me, shattering all resolve for just a heartbeat. No, but my reflection didn't stop there. It morphed, multiplying into countless images. Each one bore a silent scream, fingers grasping in frenzy, eyes wild with torment. "Join us," they pleaded. "We are many, yet we share your pain." I staggered back, desperate to cleave through the mass. But each image felt rooted in truths I had tried to escape, decisions I regretted, lives I had failed to protect, moments when cowardice had taken precedent over valor. Their anguish chipped away at my defenses, a softening of heart that twisted like the shadows themselves. "No," I screamed, feeling the heat of the shard scorching my palm. I hurled it toward the deepest dark, and it exploded in an incandescent eruption that sent shockwaves cascading outward, illuminating the grotesque forms that writhed and shrieked like a theater of the damned. But it wasn't a blow that struck me, no. It was the silence that followed, a suffocating hush that forced my heart to wail in loneliness. In the aftermath of light, I gulped the remnants of despair through ragged breaths, dazed. And then came the realization, pounding through me with terrifying clarity. Something had changed. An awareness slithered through the darkness, a monstrous consciousness that lurked, waiting to see what I had unwittingly set free. The shadows recoiled, gathering themselves for one last surge. I took a step back, preparing to confront the waves, but before I could react, a thunderous roar erupted from the depths, the darkness trembling violently, as if shaken by unseen hands. Emerging from this chaotic abyss was a monstrous silhouette, towering and grotesque, its form melding with a vortex of despair and fury. But it was not merely a being. It was a collision of my own sins, an entity comprised of incomprehensible anguish and vengeance, all manifesting into one final confrontation, a horrifying portrait of all I had lost and all I had taken. Dante, it bellowed, a voice that echoed the anguish of 100 souls. You have slumbered too long, and now you awake to face me, face the darkness within. I braced myself, clutching the shards tightly, every intention screaming at the primal urge to flee. But as I stood frozen, the creature unleashed its wrathful scream, an unholy echo that did not merely reverberate through the night, but shattered the very fabric of reality around us. The ground trembled beneath its malevolence, and in that splintering rapture, the shadows began to close in again, screaming, clawing, their tendrils wrapping tighter against me like chains forged in hell. In one anguished moment, I felt my flesh temperature drop, a suffocating chill seeping deep into my bones as I screamed to the emptiness. This can't be the end. Darkness thundered in response, closing in, pulling, wrenching, devouring. Just as despair was about to take me, something shook the very ground beneath the sigils of protection. Remnants of the past tugged at me, whispering forgotten memories of strength and sacrifice that surged in tandem with my blood. Fight! A voice echoed, a voice I barely recognized as my own. Fight for those you lost. As I felt the last flickers of consciousness slipping, the shadows surged forward, reaching for my heart, and I realized the plan swirling in darkness was not mine. To loose the fight was far from over. And in that blinding moment, the world around me exploded into chaos, heralding the final hunt, and a truth far more terrifying than the darkness itself awaited beyond the veil. The chaos of splintering reality tore through me like a knife, yet the jagged edges of fear circled tighter, a noose pulling me back into the curling maw of despair. The creature, a grotesque amalgam of horrors and regrets, towered above me, its form shifting, swirling with wrathful glee. Each pulse of its body reverberated through the night air, thick with the scent of decay and bitterness. Face the truth, Dante, it rumbled, those words rattling my bones like thunder. You are my creation, fashioned piece by piece from your own fear. All of your past is an open wound, and I am here to remind you of the blood you have spilled, the pain you have caused. As it spoke, the shadows laced tighter around me, mocking my defiance. I felt their cold fingers creep beneath my skin, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Memories surged forth, vivid and heartbreakingly real. The desperate cries of those I failed, faces contorted in pain, the weight of my cowardice that had kept me from saving them. Help them. The voices of my past begged in unison, swirling within the obsidian void of the creature's being. They clawed through the shadows, attempting to break free, and for an instant, I was swept in the tumult. Stop! I shouted, not just at the creature, but at the memories trying to drown me. I could feel the warmth of the sigil shards pulsing in my hands, connected to something deeper. I wasn't just facing my past. I was confronted by a reckoning, a final opportunity to reclaim the light. In a reckless rush of desperation, I thrust my hands forward, shards glimmering as they pierced the encroaching gloom. You want my pain? Then take it. I roared, and let the last vestiges of my strength surge through the shards. The light exploded outward, cascading shards of searing brilliance colliding with the dark void, splintering the shadows around me like shattering glass. For a moment, I felt invincible. I was the hunter once more, a beacon against pervasive darkness. But where light prevailed, shadows flared up in maddened retaliation, warped and deformed by an abhorrent fury. The shrieks of countless souls joined the tumult, unnaturally rising like a chorus of despair against the roaring backdrop of my own heartbeat. "Fool, you think you can possess light?" The creature screeched, erupting forth the tainted whispers, and its face shifted grotesquely, reflecting every lost hope I had abandoned. "You are a monument to darkness, a vessel overflowing with your own failures." Pain surged through my chest as the familiar weight of guilt clotted around my heart, gripping me in a vice of sorrow. The screams grew louder, battering against my ears, writhing in chaos. Suddenly, I felt the pull of countless bodies at my back, shadowy figures drawn from the very depths of my being. They clawed at my soul, wresting control with every ounce of grief they carried, drawing forth anguished memories in violent bursts. "Let us take the pain," they chanted in muffled voices as they surrounded me, the darkness growing heavier. "Let us bear the burden." No. It was the cry of desperation, a cry that echoed through the void. "This is mine to conquer." But was it? In that moment, wavering, I wondered, was my fight a futile endeavor? Should they take the agony? Perhaps it would quell this chaos surging within. But the shadows pulsed, chaotic tendrils stretching to entwine my heartstrings, and a choice crystallized with excruciating clarity: sacrifice my essence to save my sanity, or face the horrors embodied before me. Risking everything I held dear. As I hesitated, another figure materialized from the void: my wife. Her features, soft and serene, broke through the cacophony. "Dante, please," she whispered, stretching out her hand, a gentle guide amidst the tempest. "Hold on to me. I am not lost. Not yet." Her voice pierced the deafening roar, anchoring me momentarily. With her presence came a warmth that surged through the chilling shadows, an invitation to trust, a spark of hope against the encroaching tide. "Fight with me," she pleaded, every word wrapping around my heart like a casting net. The creature recoiled, hissing as light billowed from her, illuminating ancient markings lost in the darkness. "She is an illusion," it shrieked, desperation threading its tone. "You cannot defeat the darkness you nurture. Release her." But in that very heartbeat, the remnants of my pain became fuel. I summoned the glowing shards once more, letting the radiant fire fill every corner of my soul. Gritting my teeth, I took a stance. "Nobody gets left behind," I bellowed, launching the shards like blazing missiles into the vortex of shadows, blinding light that momentarily halted the damned confrontation. Yet beneath the cacophony, something stirred, something ancient. The creature screeched in pain, body twisting, dark limbs breaking apart as the shards struck, sending shocks through the air. Yet just as quickly as the shadows faltered, they coalesced again, enraged. And in that moment I sensed a shift, a terrifying ripple in the fabric of reality, the ground beneath unraveling as the voices of the damned harmonized in a horrific crescendo. Then the impossible happened. The shadows began to pull back, forming a portal, a swirling abyss of blacker-than-night energy that beckoned with sinister whispers. "Join us, Dante. Together we shall transcend." Just as I braced for one final push of light, desperation surged within me. The portal opened wider, revealing glimpses of unfathomable darkness that threatened to swallow everything whole. I realized not only was the hunt not over, but the true essence of the darkness was about to reveal itself, laying bare a truth that could transcend life and death. And I was teetering on the edge, caught between salvation and damnation, as the call of the abyss enveloped me, pulling me closer, but for what cost? "Dante," my wife cried once more, her voice rising against the tide of whispers. "Do not yield." Cold fingers gripped my heart, and the shadows screamed for release, their terrible hunger growing insatiable. Time stretched and twisted, and I could feel the dark legends weaving a shadowy narrative, a final hunt for the remnants of my soul. Just as the world tilted towards the maw of nothingness, I stood on the precipice of choice, feeling both exhilaration and terror surge through my veins. And then I finally understood. This was not merely an end. It was the beginning of a terror far greater than anything I had ever faced. And with one breath, one heartbeat, facing my reckoning, the ground beneath me shattered, plunging me into an endless void. The darkness swallowed me whole, pulling me beneath waves of shadow and despair, a cacophony of screams crashing against my mind. I felt like I was falling into an echo, a place where time twisted, where nightmares converged, and all reality faded into gray. My instincts screamed for survival as I fought against the tide, every fiber of my being pulling toward the flickers of light that remained, struggling against the temptation to yield to the depths. Then I landed, heavy and breathless, on a hard surface that throbbed with the energy of countless souls forever suspended in torment, their wails mingling into an agonizing symphony. I staggered to my feet, filled with a sense of dizziness that came not from the fall, but from the sheer weight of anguish weighing down my spirit. The ground pulsed beneath me, and as I looked up, I was met with the sight of countless faces swirling in the shadows, eyes filled with mournful despair and anger. They coalesced into a hazy mist that ebbed and flowed around me like a predator stalking its prey, and from their murmurings, I could feel the recognition twist in my gut. These were not strangers, but the very victims I had chased in the past, a collective of souls I had failed to save. Dante, their voices breathed, rhythmic and haunting. Join us. You cannot hunt the past. You are bound by it. Feel our pain and understand. Suddenly, a shadow surged forward from the thrumming mass, vivid and tangible, coiling around me like smoke. I recognized it instantly. It was the embodiment of my darkest deed, a monstrous form stitched from every choice I had regretted, every hesitation that had led to failure. Welcome, it sneered, a voice thick with malice. This is your reckoning. You have awakened the beast within. My heart thundered in response, and I realized the truth. I was not merely a hunter in pursuit of monsters. I was a vessel teetering on the edge of damnation, entangled in the very essence of darkness that I had sworn to protect the living from. The haunting faces of lost children blurred before me, their anguish cutting deeper than steel. You belong with us, the creature crooned, tendrils of darkness glistening as they reached toward me. I gasped, feeling the pull of their despair seep into my bones. Where regret pooled, where once there was bravery, now resided uncertainty. You have fought well, but we can give you more power, more shadows at your command. Become one of us, and you will never feel pain again. Gritting my teeth, I recoiled against the onslaught. Flashes of my darkest moments flared to life in my mind. The laughter of children turned to screams, the faces I could not save. No, I roared, clenching my fists as the shadows pressed ever closer. I won't succumb. Fool, the creature hissed, and the shadows exploded outward, colliding with the darkness to coalesce into a form more twisted than I could bear. You already have. The dark memories began to meld and twist, revealing their truths, now forms that taunted me with not only the horrors of what I'd faced, but also the devastating light of what I had never permitted myself to acknowledge, my own cowardice. They arched, convulsed, and I saw the figures distinctly. Now a hunter. Yes, but one who had turned away when he should have fought, who had let fear dim his resolve. Even as I recognized them, the figures grew silent, their hope all but extinguished, a chorus of terror resonating with an unspoken finality. Somewhere in me, seeds of despair began to sprout. The sheer impotence of it, they were echoes of my failures clawing for recognition. Were those whispers the truth of my legacy? Would I carry their burdens into eternity? Repent, they cried, and as they did, the creature cast a look back at me, eyes glowing with expectation. Let their pain consume you. Embrace it. In that instant, everything around me rippled. The darkness surged forward like a tide of nightmares, and I felt adrenaline muscle my way through the very marrow of my being. I was caught in a vortex, stripped back to my core, standing before a truth I could no longer deny. I could neither banish nor outrun my past. It was stitched into my very identity. With every heartbeat, I felt the shadows constrict. But then a whisper erupted within me, soft, yet unwavering. It was a memory, or perhaps a promise, one that broke through the oppressive murmur of anguish. I remembered my wife, her unyielding spirit shining through the murk. Every morsel of light we had forged together against the darkness. And suddenly, Clarity struck. Enough, I shouted, the grounds trembling beneath me. I will not be bound to your broken dreams. And with that flicker of resolve, I reached once more for the shard of light I held tightly in my palm, feeling its warmth surge, a remnant of hope fighting against despair's cold grip. I let out a roar against the darkness, fueled by all the lost souls I had encountered, a cry honed with the strength of both love and loss. You will not take me. The light burst forth, ripping through the shadows as if I was a gilded thread pushing through the endless fabric of despair, severing the darkness around me. The faces in the gloom recoiled, yet even as I fought back the shadows, the creature loomed larger, its laughter filling the abyss. Do you think this is victory? It mocked, a voice thrumming with a malignant satisfaction. You think you've won? You've only freed me, Dante. The darkness does not fade, you will only embrace it. Shock washed over me as realization settled like a tombstone on my heart. No matter how brightly I shone, the shadows were relentless. They transformed, writhing around me like a serpent, inching dangerously close, always at the periphery of light, a reminder that what I fought against could not be completely vanquished. As the figure lunged toward me, the air thickened with the weight of inevitability. And a thought, chilling and profound, seeped into my mind. Freedom comes at a price. The final struggle had begun. I had released the darkest of my demons, but they were not merely lost souls. They were my kin, representations of my darkness intertwined with my existence. Would I be the hunter who banished them once more, or the architect who birthed them anew? The pulse of the abyss resonated in synchrony with my heart, a revelation dawning like the darkest night. No matter the outcome, I would never truly be free from them. I would forever linger on the edge, caught between what I had severed and what continued to call to me, lurking and waiting, shadows that whispered, "Remember, we are eternal." And, with that thought, darkness enveloped me, a final embrace that echoed through my very soul like a haunting lullaby that would never fade. I was not alone. Not anymore. Even now, I could hear their calls, caressing the edges of my consciousness like lovers lost in a realm where light dared not tread. I had been summoned to this final hunt, and in the grand tapestry of life and death, I was merely another fragile stitch, forever woven in the shadows.